Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. This is Kehillat Shari Torah's Halacha Review for Monday, June 15th. Yesterday we were speaking, actually the last couple of days, end of last week, we were talking about air travel. Hopefully those days will come back to us. We'll be able to hop on a plane and head off to wherever we like for vacation, to visit family, for friends, for simchas, whatever it is. Once that becomes possible, we'll need to know what to do properly. So we talked about Tfilas HaDerech a little bit. We talked about sleeping on an airplane and so on. And I think the last thing we talked about was davening while being dressed properly. So we should always daven, whether we're in shul or at home or on a plane or anywhere, as if we're going to meet the King of all kings, which is actually exactly what we're doing, speaking directly to Hashem. So if one would dress more nicely for a photo op with the premier or with the mayor, so one should examine one's choice of attire and make sure that when we daven, we're also dressed properly. Now, of course, we don't go to meet the queen every day of the week, much less 3 times a day. We'd be quite a nudge if we did. So we get a little bit accustomed to it, and we figure, you know what, I'll daven in my pajamas, I'll daven with no socks on, whatever it happens to be. So we always try to make an effort, wherever we are, whatever the davening situation is, to be most appropriately attired, cleaned up, nicely as best we can. So what happens when you've been sleeping all night on the plane? So you want to try as best you can to tuck your shirt in and to put your shoes on if they still fit after the overnight flight, whatever it is. And of course, wash hands before davening. Again, I think we mentioned a little bit last week, according to Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, there were a number of troubles in the last 20, 25 years with people being quite a public nuisance on planes, trying with the best of intentions to daven, but taking up all the space by the galley where the flight attendants work, taking up that space and blocking people's access to the washrooms and so on. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman paskined about 25 years ago probably that a person could daven the entire davening, Shmona Esra, everything, Aleinu, everything seated in one's plane seat with the seatbelt fastened, particularly when they tell you to do that. If they don't tell you to do it and it's midas achsidus, beyond the letter of the law, lifnim mishuras adin, to wear your seatbelt just because it's a good practice, so definitely. But if they tell you to put on your seatbelt for safety, there's no excuse not to wear your seatbelt when that's the instruction of the flight crew. A mechitza we usually require for davening. We mentioned a few times in different contexts where a minyan is not considered a minyan kavua. In other words, it's, God forbid, it's someone's shiva. Some people are sitting shiva and we're making a minyan there. Or we're at the ballpark. That could happen. That's happened to us the last couple of times we've been to the ballpark as a group. We struck up a minyan in the, across from the popcorn stand there. So if we're in a place where it's not a regular, reliable, established minyan, in a pinch we are allowed to daven without a minyan. So an airplane is certainly that. No one takes a flight somewhere so that they can daven. So we're allowed to daven without a mechitza. Some poskim say that tachanun, nefilas apayim, putting your head down, can only be recited in a place that has a sefer Torah. Tachanun is recited on an airplane, but without placing one's head on one's arm, says Rabbi Lebovitz. There are those who say, Shulchan HaTorah cites that the practice that some do not say Tachanun at all when they're traveling. I've also seen other people who say Tachanun with their head down when they're traveling. So, once again, variance of opinion. One more thing we need to know, which is washing our hands. So usually we want to wash our hands with a cup, so it's actually through human agency. When we pick up a cup, fill it with water, and pour it one hand on the other. So that's why we have washing cups at each of the places where you can wash around the shul and in our homes and so on. So they don't usually have one of those on flights, even on El Al, believe it or not. What people do is use their little coffee cup, which is a disposable cup. So it gets into a question of, is that an actual kli or not? So it's a vessel, it holds water. You can put water in, it'll hold. You can put coffee in, we're counting on that so it doesn't spill on us. But is it really a vessel in terms of having permanence? So it's made to throw away, so it's really not. So there is a conversation amongst the poskim. Since you're supposed to use a kli, use a vessel to wash your hands, if there's no other cup available, what are you going to do? But if you can somehow or other manage to get something that's a little more lasting, even a plastic cup, so better to do it. And he adds one note here. We should be sure to dry our hands outside of the washroom, because I think we said this before, whether or not it does have the din of a beis hakisa, of a latrine. In other words, a place in the olden days in the old country that was not so pleasant to be in. We're not supposed to make brachas in the washroom, so we do step out of there, even with damp hands and a little paper towel. People look at you funny, don't worry, it's okay. Make the bracha outside of the washroom and then dry your hands and go about your meal or your day or your davening or whatever it has to be. As long as it's in good health and for happy occasions that we're traveling, it's all good. Have a good day.